Hi, fellow nerds and viewers and listeners, honorable ones. Welcome to another episode of Reinventing Nerds. And I've got a really fun and special guest today named Scott Krawitz. He is the CEO of People Driven Solutions. And I'm assuming there's an ink on there because it's PDSI for short, right? And
Yes.
oh, good. Okay. So, what does he do? He provides technology advisory services through PDSI, and their signature service is called Virtual CTO, Chief Technology Officer. So, if you're looking for help with that, they provide fractional technology leadership. And I want to have Scott explain what that means. First off, first question: what is fractional technology leadership?
Sure, Joanie. And thanks again for having me on. So, fractional technology leadership is really just us leveraging the gig economy to get companies that don't have technology leadership the right technology leadership without having to have a full-time employee in there. And then, once we're able to support them and figure out the direction, the right roadmap, then we also can support delivery of the solutions with our partner ecosystem of over 400 partners across software, security, business intelligence. So think of us as like Uber or Airbnb for technology vendors.
Nice. That's a nice visual there. So
Thank
how did
you.
you get into this? I mean, what's your background, Scott?
Yeah, so I've been a technologist, entrepreneur for about 20 years. Started out, my first computer was a Commodore 64. Seeing
Mhm.
this is a nerd podcast, I'll mention that.
Yeah.
My first language, coding language was Turbo Pascal in high school, and in the summers of college, when my friends would work as lifeguards, I went to a staffing firm and I got a job doing level one tech support. Um, in college, I worked in the computer lab. After that, I went to law school. I wanted to focus on intellectual property law, but decided that I'd rather be the transaction than process it. I think IP attorneys offer a great service, but I just had this drive to go create something out of nothing. So from there, I worked as an IT manager in Australia. That's another episode how I got there. So I did that for a couple of years, then worked at a systems integrator in New York City as what was called a project architect. So basically, I was able to do everything from pre-sales, project management, learning a lot about different technologies at different companies. From there, decided to kind of take things to the next level. So did an MBA in international management at a school called Thunderbird. Focused on entrepreneurship there, and out of there, founded my first software as a service company. It was a loan pricing engine for mortgage brokers, and we founded it right in the middle of the subprime crisis. So
Yeah, fun.
great technology, a little lesson learned on timing. Um, but from there, I did a decent amount of project management within medium to large size organizations, helping them do everything from data center moves to building out software portals, business intelligence platforms. Had one more startup that was basically it was called Bottle Joy. It was like a Pandora for wine. Um, Basically hung up the gloves on that one. And this is about 6 years ago when I decided, look, after all these lessons and just the direction the gig economy was going, we decided to start people-driven solutions to really help companies get the leadership they needed so they could make the right decisions and be able to actually build technology with the right resources at the right time without having to have them on a full-time basis. So
Yeah.
long answer to a short question.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's great. I mean, because you bring us through the history there. And, we've talked offline about the Australia piece
Yes.
there, but I also know that you have just a passion for traveling, right? I mean, global
Mm,
travel, right? That's one of the
yes.
things that you like to do. And
Hmm.
I would like to sort of start out with there because that's one of my interests too. I have a
Oh, great.
huge passion in travel, and one of the things, my favorite things to do is just to go and learn about people and watch people and see how they interact. And
Hmm.
that's something that helps me in my work just here in the United States. And I was curious how that has impacted you and your learning about people's strategies and your global experience.
Certainly. It's a great question. I think it's an invaluable experience for any leader to have, just being able to explore different cultures, and understand that I think that we altogether have more similarities than there are differences, but that there also are some nuances with the way that different cultures create, whether you're talking about, power distance or perception, saving face. I think, this notion of like cross-cultural agility is key in today's economy, and especially in America, which is essentially, such a melting pot, such a, great diverse set of cultures from different places. I think, you ignore cultural differences at your own peril. So as much as people are the same, I think it's powerful to be able to observe folks in their home country and really understand really where they're coming from.
I actually, aside from the Reinventing Nerds, I think that's one of the most important lessons that we can be learning today and thinking about, because people are so focused on differences right now, and we're divided. So pulling that together, and from your experience being around the world and noticing that, I'm sure that you'll be a good role model in helping others to see those similarities. Even at work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. So, all right. One of the things that you have said that you might have some opinions on would be like, what are some of the most critical people skills for a technologist?
Yeah, great question. So I've been thinking about this a little bit, and a way I can frame it in nerd-friendly parlance. So, I started life as sort of like a network engineer. So I thought of this model where we could talk about it in the context of basically transmitting a message, receiving a message, and processing a message.
Yeah.
So almost like that kind of system. So I just thought we could go over it like that. So transmitting a message, like understanding who your audience is, both as far as being able to communicate in a technical and non-technical manner, right? Really understanding who you're working with. I think also culturally understanding who you're working with, and what their inherent communication style might be, or their biases, etc. And then also I think your tone, really paying attention to your tone and in the delivery of the message as much as the message itself. I think, also on a transmit front, perception management, understanding that, perception is reality. That's kind of my experience of how it works in the business world, right? So regardless of what the truth may be, regardless of, whether Amazon did have an outage, right? That's why it went down. It's really understanding that people may see things differently, and that it's your job as a technology leader to manage that perception, and along with that, setting expectations, right? Really making sure that you're clear about what you're going to deliver, and it's always better to basically under promise and over deliver than the converse. So I think those are the key communication skills on the transmit side. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Can you
Okay.
explain a little bit more about tone, though? I'd love to hear what tone means to you, and what kind of challenges that you may have experienced with tone. Yeah.
Yeah, great. So I think, a lot of times technologists are, may just be more about communicating directly and
Yeah.
just about getting information across
Hmm.
without understanding that, that tone is imperative. For example, if you look, I think it's like in Mandarin, if you say the word like
Yeah.
ma, for example, I think ma said 5 different ways means 5 different things, like
Hmm.
ma, and it literally
Hmm.
means like mother, horse, like water, all these different things.
Yeah.
So like, maybe it's not so much the case in English, but it is the case in other languages. So when you're communicating, especially to folks that may speak languages like that, or just even directly, really understanding how you're being heard, and asking for people to repeat back what they understand, seeking constant feedback from your managers, from your peers, to really just understand how you're being heard and having awareness around that.
Hmm. Okay, so then also bringing this to the receiving end, right?
Mhm.
Is that where you're going to go
Yes.
next? Okay.
Yes,
Go for it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Very good, very good. So on the receiving end, I think it's one of the key communication skills is listening. Always listening. I think it's the key to interacting with any other human being or even any other piece of technology, right? Making sure that the message is received. And listening for meaning, listening for empathy, with empathy for meaning. So for example, if a non-technical business owner, a non-technical, say manager, comes to you and says something, really trying to listen for the words in between the words, like trying to read between the lines and understand what's really being communicated instead of just taking things, at the base level. I think that can be important. Um, and I think with that, you have this middle layer of processing. And I think emotional intelligence is just a key communication, or a key skill for technology leaders. And I think that underlies everything: the transmit, the receive, and the processing. So as you're transmitting, um, basically using the right filter of empathy and understanding how your message will be received, reframing things when they need to be reframed. And similarly, paying attention to what has heart and meaning when you listen to a business leader. So, really just trying to get the meaning from within.
Okay, so again, I'm going to ask you to elaborate on something here. Using the right filter of empathy. What does that mean? It's just so juicy. I got to get into this.
Sure, great. Well, there's four universal communication values. There's this cultural anthropologist named Angela Sarian who did this research back in the day, and she came up with these four, basically common communication traits across all cultures around the world. So, the first is to show up and choose to be present. So really, I think the first thing is just to make sure that you're here. You have to be here now. You can't be somewhere else. Like communicating with someone else, it's like a gift you're being given, like their time. It's time is it's so valuable, right? So showing up, choosing to be present. And then, with regards to this empathy, once you're sort of on and listening, again, paying attention to what has heart and meaning to that person. So realizing that the person speaking to you or listening to you may have different values, may have different beliefs. I mean, culture is a combination of value and beliefs, right? So really trying to, even if you don't know exactly what those are, at least, trying to pay attention and try to read them and understand what has meaning for them. And the next is, to be open to outcome, not attached to it. So not trying to project your values or your beliefs on what they're saying. Not trying to think that you have the answer while they're speaking it. Not thinking about what you're going to say next while they're speaking. Really being open to the outcome. And then finally, telling the truth without blame or judgment. Right. So being honest and being open, but doing it in a sensitive way. So that's what I mean by listening with empathy.
Okay, right. Yeah. Um, Excellent. One of the things that I think is the hardest for people today in the life that we have is being present. I mean, just showing
Mm,
up and, turning off the technology or not letting that get in the way. I mean, I see this in personal realms, people all on social media now, when they're at an event, they're really about showing pictures of that event to people outside of that event, right?
right. Yeah.
When you're in a meeting, in a business meeting, people are having texts coming in while they're in the meeting and responding to things that are going on outside of the meeting. So, how does this show up for you? How do you deal with those kind of issues about being present? And, how do you
Hmm.
overcome that? Or do you? Or do you suffer from that yourself?
Yeah, well, I think I try to be mindful of it, and I think having an awareness of it is a start. I think you have varying levels of control of it depending on the situation.
Mm-hmm.
So, say for example, internally with our team meetings, we start each of our team meetings with 5 minutes of meditation.
Really?
So yeah, we're a virtual company. We meet once a month, and when we meet in person, we always start with meditation. So people have come from different places, and dropping off kids or client issues or whatever. So we always
Mm-hmm.
start just by centering, closing our eyes, and we do 5 minutes of guided meditation just to really try to kind of bring you present. I know it might sound a little bit new agey, but honestly, it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really interesting, Scott, to bring that into the meeting, because often I advise people to do that ahead of time, showing up before the
Mm.
meeting and doing that, wherever it is, just 5 minutes beforehand, but actually making sure that everyone's on the same page and we're all present in the meeting together. Yeah, that's good. How do people respond to that?
It varies. Certain folks in the team are more open to it than others, but
Mhm.
after the first couple times, I think everybody ended up appreciating it because
Mhm.
it just calms the mind. So I think, with meditation as a practice like anything else, you get to different levels over time, but even just the ability, to your point, to turn everything off, just take a few deep breaths and kind of try to get to a place where you're tuned in, I think is key.
Yeah. Okay. Um, yeah. Sometimes I also think about the purpose of the meeting or my purpose for being
Hmm.
there, right?
Yeah.
And you talk about the different filters that you use for empathy. Which one are you going to employ at the time, or things like that? So,
Hmm.
or just emptying your head, I suppose, of all the distractions. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yeah,
Excellent.
that's key.
Well, another thing you've mentioned to me is the digital pause. And, we're talking about all these distractions. What is the digital pause? And, why is it important?
Yeah, well, when you were asking for topics, I was thinking about something that's directly related to communication skills for technology leaders, and I will share. I'm going to use this as an opportunity to process something that happened to me recently.
Good. Yes,
We
please.
have a client who has the leader of the company is basically an engineer and a technologist,
Hmm.
and this person is relatively new to their role. And we've done a ton just to help this company and this client out. And then I get an email from one of my directors saying, "Wow, it seems like we have an issue here. There really seems to be a problem." And I read this email, and it sounded like definitely uncharacteristic of this leader, but it was actually a very hurtful email and didn't sound anything like
Hmm.
what we've experienced in serving them for the last couple years. So I said, okay, maybe this person is just having a bad day. Everybody gets to
Right.
hit enter when they shouldn't sometimes. I said, okay, so I left it alone. So
Mhm.
I'll just let it blow over. But then, like a week later, I got another one again to my director that was basically even more scathing and like bordering on like needing to take some legal action, things that were
Mhm.
completely just out of left field and untrue. And and I said, okay, well, now I'm realizing that this is something deeper, that this person clearly just doesn't realize or understand what they're doing. Or I mean, if they do, that's a real concern. So it kind of in communications and coaching, you hear about this notion of the pause, right? Like waiting
Mhm.
before you say something. So
Mhm.
that's why I came up with this sort of notion of a digital pause, because I think it's people I think might feel that there's an exception because it's on a keyboard and it's not coming out of your mouth. But really, I mean, it can be even more hurtful or even more
Mhm.
interpreted in a different way. I use a good example. So, say for example, you have the sentence, "I never said you were beautiful." Right? If
Oh
you
gosh.
accent, have you heard this one before?
No,
No,
go
not
ahead.
you personally.
Yeah. No, I'm just thinking like that
That's
can be
great.
interpreted a lot of different ways. Go on.
Right? So yeah, just put the emphasis on a different word each time. So you go like, I never said you were beautiful. 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 Right? I heard this from someone once, and it's just amazing, right? That one sentence, 5 different meanings.
Mhm.
So you can imagine, I mean, using email for an emotionally charged message at
Mhm.
all ever. Just take it out of your repertoire. Like it's
Right.
email should be used for information, number one. And then number two, just really thinking, before you send that text, before you send that email, before you make that post or that retort or that even that Facebook post, right? Like this is basically memorialized for all time now, right? It's like everything is in the cloud.
Mhm.
It's like you can't take it back, right? So really, I think having the same level of sensitivity to digital channels as you do with others, I think is key. And I think it can be a real challenge for technology leaders because everybody's on Slack and everybody's on Twitter and all these sort of fast-moving channels. But I think it's even more critical that people just kind of let's use our model, right? That a
Mhm.
message was transmitted, it's received, and then it's processed. And just give yourself like a brief pause before you press that button. I think that could be a great way to save your career. It's interesting. I noticed that I don't know if you use Google or Gmail. Use Gmail?
Of course.
Of
Yeah.
course, yes. Yeah. Okay. This is
Everyone
a nerd
uses
podcast. I should have
Google.
guessed, right?
Yeah.
All the good nerds use Gmail, right? But I don't know if you ever noticed, they have basically a delay send in
Right.
the email there, which I highly
Mhm.
recommend. Yeah, I mean, before it was a lab and now it's fully integrated. But I mean, yeah, I always use that 4 or 5 seconds. I can't tell you how many times even being mindful it saved me. I think I wish that every digital medium had that built in, like the 5 second cancel.
Yeah. Oh, wow, that's really good advice. So I want to hear like what happened. How did you handle the situation you just described to us?
Yeah, I'm still in the process of handling it now, but
Okay.
I mean, if not for just some people I've listened to and some coaching of my own, I probably would have, my gut 5 years ago would probably have been to try to harm this person back equally, or
Oh, yeah.
respond via the same channels, via
Yeah.
email, or
Right.
discredit them, or do something, and
Mhm.
but I'm looking at it as an opportunity for growth. So
Mhm.
what I've done is reached out to this person and said, listen, we need to meet face to face
Right.
because this is the correct way to address this. And there's a conflict model, right, for resolving conflict. So
Mhm.
basically, I'm planning to be very clear about how I understood the message and to make sure that I got it right. And so this person understands the impact and see if there's anything else that needs to be said. And
Mhm.
let's just agree to move on, but understanding that this is not really an appropriate way to do this, especially for the leader of a company.
Right. Wow, that's great. I would have said pick up the phone because sometimes if people aren't co-located, but if you can meet face to face, that is the best to
Agreed.
resolve these
Agreed.
kind of conflicts. And
Yes.
yeah, I don't know if you have the book Crucial Conversations, but that's one that I recommend
Yeah.
to people, right, to get a safe environment to have that
Exactly.
conversation. So
Excellent.
yeah. Oh, how interesting. So that you've had some, I guess, sort of thought processing. You've had some coaching, you said, and that's great. All leaders, and myself included, we all need some coaching to get to be better leaders and practice what we preach. But going from where you were, of like, I probably would have just hit reply and like something even more
Yeah.
scathing to,
Right.
hey, how do I handle this now? It's not on email, it is face to face.
Right.
Yeah, no, that definitely shows true leadership there and trying to
Thank you.
connect. um, Excellent. Well, I would love for you to give our listeners and viewers a little bit about how they can contact you and what kind of services in particular that they could expect if they wanted to reach you.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, we're always happy to have a conversation around technology. And
Mhm.
so if a company doesn't have a CTO or chief technology officer and they're looking for decision support on what the right system is, if they're looking for a true strategic trusted advisor about how to use technology to, increase the top line or increase the bottom line, be more efficient, we're always happy to have those conversations. And we just have an amazing network of CTOs that have been there, have been in the trenches, and are able to provide that guidance to help companies make the best use of their resources. And if for all your technology leaders that are listening, I know a lot of times people have a good network, but your average technology leader might have a roadmap that's 10 miles long, and maybe there's a couple of blind spots. Maybe they need a couple good options for some integrators for business intelligence, or maybe they were just hacked and they don't know the right security company to turn to. Or,
Mhm.
I mean, no shame in reaching out, and we're happy to connect the dots for those folks as well. And then finally, we do actually offer we have a retained search offering as well. So if anybody out there is looking for director, VP, or C-suite technology leadership, we're able again just to leverage our network and help find the right fit to move the company to the next level. Oh, yeah, and as far as contact details,
Yes.
um, sure, be nice, right? Sure, you can reach me at, I'll give you my personal email. It's Scott, SCOTT, at peopledriven.co. So Scott at peopledriven.co as opposed to com. Or you can just call us up at 619-908-1407. Happy to chat.
Excellent. Yeah, and those pieces of information will be in the show notes so that if you didn't catch them all, you don't have to hit rewind. You can just get on reinventingnerds.com and we'll have all of Scott's info there. Oh, cool. So this has been really interesting, and I really appreciate you sharing some of the lessons that I learned. I mean, I just loved your model there because my original nerd career was electrical engineer, and I was in data communications. So when
Hmm.
you talk about this model of transmit, receive, and process, I'm like, okay, I got it. I even know the chips, whatever,
Nice,
to do that,
nice,
and I know that will resonate with a lot of technical people who are listening.
excellent,
So I really
great.
appreciate that. and yeah, talking about your experiences. Thank you so much for doing that.
Perfect. Perfect. Can I give just two more quick shout outs?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. So first, I'm on the board of this organization called NFAR. It's a National Foundation for Autism Research, and we
Hmm.
have a technology training program that trains folks on the autism spectrum to be software quality assurance testers. So on two fronts. Number one, if there's anybody out there that knows someone that might benefit from this program, that would be great. And also, if there's anyone that's running any kind of software development operation, these folks are just amazing testers, and we're always looking for projects where we can employ their skills. And then in addition, if anybody's looking for sort of more of like an executive forum experience for technology leaders, I can't say enough good things about 7CTOs. It's a groups of 7 CTOs that meet monthly and talk about topics like we're talking about, and I think they're really doing a lot to help evolve nerds into leaders. So just feel free to reach out to them as well.
Okay, great. Yeah,
Great.
thanks. This is really nice. I appreciate that as well, giving an opportunity for people on the autism spectrum to get involved and also to support them as well. So,
So,
okay, well, Scott, this has been great. Thank you very much for being a guest.
thank you for having me, Joanie. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'm just going to tell our listeners we're at reinventingnerds.com. Subscribe to us on iTunes, on YouTube, and also you can join us on Facebook or LinkedIn on the Reinventing Nerds group. So thanks a lot for coming, and join us next time.